Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and joining me once again is Allison.
Greetings.
This is going to be us reviewing Battlestar Galactica. This is Season 1, Episode 2. It is simply called Water. So spoilers for the episode, as always. We have seen the whole show before, but we won't be spoiling later events to the best of our ability, so just keep that in mind. This is a rewatch show. So, yeah, I mean, the title kind of gives away the main concern of this episode, which is water, and finding more of it. It's actually not a concern to begin with. It's only a concern because a bit of light sabotage ruins the water supply they have. But we'll get into all the details. What did you think of this one?
Well, it is maybe a tiny bit of a letdown from the suspension and tension of the miniseries and the first episode, which is so incredibly tense. But still, there's a lot going on that we don't know what's going on at points. And then there was also kind of a side plot about the politics and the relationships between the people. I think it's absolutely good. It's definitely enjoyable. It's just not quite at the highest point like I think the first episode was.
Yeah, it's definitely a step down from 33. 33 is such a cool premise, such an intense premise that inherently this couldn't quite be up to that same level again. It was impossible to keep that level of tension going like for multiple episodes. And in many ways you could argue we needed to come down a little bit, but I think it's still a pretty good episode. I do have a couple of little quips here or there or things that I want to.
Okay.
I think the ending, for example, is a little bit weak. It just kind of ends in kind of a nothing cliffhanger. It's one of those things where sometimes a TV episode will be like, right, we don't really have like an exciting ending for this, so we're going to just play some dramatic music as a character has a look of intent on their face, and that'll do. They'll just...
Yeah, we're done with this week's story. Moving along.
Yeah. It's almost like we have to use an editing trick to let you know it's the end of the episode, as opposed to the event actually being the end of an episode.
Sure.
So we'll get into things. Sharon's a big part of this. Boomer specifically is a big part of this episode. We start this one with her waking up very disorientated, clearly not knowing where she is. She's soaked in water, which is a hint of things to come. But she is shocked to find in the bag in front of her, and she has no memory of how she got here, why she's, what she's up to. But she finds some explosives in the bag in front of her and a detonator, and takes it apart, makes sure it doesn't go off. She's very nervous and scared. But the big sort of cliffhanger going into the opening is that when she tries to put it back in the arms locker, she finds there's 5 or 6 other empty slots, implying that she might have actually planted explosives somewhere and doesn't know. Now, when she goes to Tyrell to try and get help and have an ally and someone to confess to, she doesn't say she thinks she's done something with them. She thinks, and he even says, someone's clearly setting you up. You woke up somewhere with no knowledge of how you got there. You were drugged or something. We obviously have different perspective on that as the audience, because we all know she's a sleeper silent agent. So we're thinking, oh, the programming's kicking in, but she's not aware of it, or whatever's happening. But that kind of sets up the main gist of the episode, which is that these explosives take out the water supply, and we go through a bunch of stuff with that. Which, I mean, how did you generally feel about the way they portray Boomer's struggle in this episode? And I'm talking one on how it starts, but also later on when it's like she can't tell her co-pilot that she's found water, but she's kind of like trying to say the words, but it's almost like something's just stopping her, almost like she's struggling to get out a sentence she's not allowed to say or something like that.
Yeah, I really like Sharon, Boomer, all the Sharons as a character. I think she's very empathetic. It's clear that her confusion, we share her confusion at the beginning of the episode, even having the knowledge already that Sharon is a one of the models of the human Cylons. But our Boomer is a good Sharon, right? She doesn't know. She's not actively part of this plot to destroy humanity.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why the tension's there and works quite well in that opening is because even though we have more context for why she maybe did what she's done, we don't know what she did with these bombs. There's still, there's literally, we talk and writing a lot about the bomb under the table. She's hidden 5 or 6 bombs under a table somewhere, and we don't know where it is, but we know they're going to go off. But that actually happens quite early on in the episode, relatively speaking. And then after that point, I think her struggle with herself is its most interesting in that first 10 minutes. I think the rest of the episode, it's fine, right? But it kind of gets into what I was talking about with the ending, where like they just kind of end it with like the camera get into her face after everything's been kind of diffused, like, oh, she's still a threat. She's still the Cylon on board the Galactica. She might still cause trouble later. It's like, okay, all right. I mean, that makes sense. But if anything, all the like the political stuff in this episode and like the Roslyn Adama relationship kind of starting to form was the more, I think, more of a full meal of a storyline to me. It felt like I was getting a lot out of that because it was setting up these building blocks that we're going to keep coming back to, and it was, there's that little thing early on about how Adama's putting on the full regalia, everyone's getting dressed up for the president's visit, and we hear Rosalind say, I'll let Adama do this to, make him feel like, we're going through the military protocols, but then she finds out from Apollo that Adama hates this shit. He hates putting on these, like, shows and the pageantry, but he only did it to try and make Rosalind feel presidential, like that they were taking her presidential run seriously. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, there's this little seed of respect that's just built a little bridge between them, which, is really nice.
Yeah, it's showing that they have already developed a mutual respect. They already understand, of course, how tense and difficult the situation they're in and how much it is going to continue to be that way, so that both of them are trying to respect the other in order to allow for continued, mutual ability to work together, which we are really seeing also in like those conference room parts of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shows Adama's like trying to accommodate her, because there's that moment where she asks Gaeta to give a guess as to what caused the explosion, or this, because they don't necessarily know it's sabotage yet at that moment, and Adama kind of makes it clear that he doesn't like his officers guessing, right? He wants to wait for facts, and that's just kind of his protocol. But he kind of just gives in a second later and says, "Okay, Lieutenant, like, give a guess." And it felt like a little like olive branch of a moment of like, you know what, you want to have this, you want to have a guess before we have the facts, so you can maybe start thinking of options or start thinking about what to do
speculation.
next. Yeah. So no, I like that. Nice little moment there.
So I think we should jump back a little and talk about kind of the actual setup of the situation. Seeing the water tanks explode, we find out that the Galactica has really almost 100% water recycling, but a lot of the other ships in the fleet aren't set up for that. So they have to keep basically having them come for fill-ups of water to have enough water for the people on board. And of course, as this is happening, we see a bunch of water tanks get blown out.
Before we get to the sort of the aftermath of them taking the water out, let's just analyze the water situation as it was for a second. So okay, I buy that the Galactica is built for like long-term travel, right? It was the idea that it can be in space for years without having to resupply.
Deep space mission, sure.
Right, in their water. So it's recycling. They're kind of like a big camel, right? Where they can last a long time in the same water, but eventually they will have to get fresh water, but they can recycle for X amount of time. Cool. I do question, though, if like a third of the fleet is also taking some of this water every month or whatever it would be. Surely that wouldn't last as long as it normally would, I would have to assume.
No. But perhaps ships that don't have the recycling capability could still be cycling the water that needs to be recycled back to the Galactica.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, maybe when they come and get their new batch, they'll pump in their waste or whatever it would be that they're recycling. I mean, yes, it's the waste.
That's kind of what I assumed was happening. Yeah, but they have a futuristic purifying system that allows allows for that to be safe. So, um,
we're really dancing around the fact that they're just drinking their own pee effectively. But yeah, that's that's fine. Got to survive.
okay, I know it's not your favorite, but this is also what they do in Dune in those still suits they wear in the deserts. Is
Do you know?
it captures every drop of moisture and allows them to reuse
I
it.
I did think of Dune when he said at one point, Adama early on said, "Oh, no water is wasted." I did think of Dune when he said that. However, when you started that sentence, I did not think you were going to say Dune. I thought you were going to say Waterworld, but that's just my brain going to weird places.
We could take a side trip about which you dislike more, but maybe we should stay focused.
I mean, Dune's obviously objectively better. I'm not going to sit here
Sure.
like a madman and say that. I mean, they're both pretty boring, if I'm honest. But anyway,
Okay.
so one of the things that we don't really see in this show, and we just kind of accept that, it's science fiction. They've got some fancy way to have gravity on the ship, right? On all their ships. There's never any like talk about anything spinning. There's never anything like that. The one scene in this episode, though, that it kind of irked me a little bit, that there was where it felt a bit weird, is after the explosions, right? And it's the engineers all go in to check the damage in the tanks, and because they're exposed, like the hull's literally blown out, they've all got their spacesuits on, and all I could think was, why did maybe you could just argue they've got big magnets in their boots or something, but it really just felt like
on The Expanse.
Yeah, like on The Expanse. But it really just felt like there was just gravity for some reason. And I'm like, there's literally a hole to space. You can tell me that there's gravity inside the ship. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief, but you really need to be bobbing up and down a little bit if you're out in space,
Those were really cool scenes, though, with Sharon and Crashdown in the Raptor outside, like shining light into the tanks.
Oh yeah, the atmosphere was good. Though the atmosphere was great.
Tyrell and Callie and everybody else, and they find something, and it looks like it's burnt up, but who knows what it really is? Like, they're really not sure. But Tyrell later talks about it to the conference room. But just one more point, I think, on the water is that as soon as they find, almost immediately when this happens initially, they say they have about 6 days worth of water for Galactica, but a third of the ships are relying on them to replenish and only have like 2 days worth of water, which is nothing. And so they start finding out which ships they are, immediately sending out messages to ration and limit water, which plays into some of the the political situation later on as well.
Yeah. So there's a bit of so it's almost like they're trying to do the tension of 33 again with this timer of we only have 2 days of water for 16,000 people. That should in theory be tense. I don't know if I ever felt the search for. I think it's because they didn't milk it enough, right? I feel like we hear about the fact that there's a fight breaking out on another ship because water rations sound quite harsh and whatnot and desperate, but we never see it, right? We only hear about it. Now, having said that, it does lead to one of my favourite little conversations between Adama and Rosalind, actually, is when Rosalind says, hey, there's fights breaking out and there's rioting because of the rations and people scared that they're not going to have water. We need to send some Galactica personnel over to sort of police them. And Adama, I think, makes an interesting little speech about why he believes the military and the police should be separate. Even though they're in a situation here where they don't have a police force, they kind of need to use they only train people with weapons and discipline in the fleet are on Galactica, right? They don't have that. It would be convenient if there was some sort of police vehicle in the fleet as well to handle that separately, but there isn't. So he talks about how we fight the enemies of the state, and if we start fighting the people in the state, then it muddies the water a bit too much, and it's why it's good to keep them separate. I thought that was a really interesting point coming from him, and him not wanting to muddy those waters, and then Rosalind kind of basically saying, look, we're going to have to do it, but I promise you I won't let the people become the enemy of the state. I promise that is not the intent here, to go all big brother and start clamping down on people in ways that are unjust.
Yes, one could argue that we're still in an emergency crisis kind of situation. So even if we have long-term plans for a better solution, this right now needs to be dealt with, and we can't wait to figure all that other stuff out. It was also very sweet just before that conversation when Rosalind sees all the books that Adama has in his
And all
quarters
those sweet cut off corners. Yeah, on you go.
and asks to borrow a book, and he asks her if she's ever read a certain one and just says it's a gift, never lend books. But you can just see it's not just that she's a school teacher, it's that she only brought one book with her on the trip to the Galactica, and it's like it sparks something in her that he's like a fellow book lover. Like it's maybe something else they can have in common. It's another way to build a bridge between them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and also, you always need a good book to read.
Well, it's not like they've got access to the internet anymore.
Yeah.
They need some physical entertainment to to keep them
Mm-hmm.
going.
Yeah.
I do love though, because we're set in this other time and space. We can't reference any real material, so every time they mention a book or a historian, it has to be some made up sci-fi thing. Like
Sure.
Like I bet the author of this book they bring up, I bet it's like like Ronald D. Moore's cousin or something. Like they're just pulling names out of the family hat. Like who am I going to say invented electricity in Battlestar Galactica's history? Oh, my nephew Michael, like him. Like that's his name, kind of thing. So I find that fun just from like the silly side of writing sci-fi stuff is you just have to make up a bunch of like alternate history.
Oh, I was just going to say, so they send out various raptors. Of course, Sheridan crashed down in one of them for the various nearby star systems to see if there's any water that they can get. Nobody ever says, I think, exact odds, but Ty seems pretty dismal on this. Like most things in space are just hunks of rock. So it's probably not a good chance. And Adama says, well, if we have to, we'll just jump someplace else and start looking again. So they know it's a bad situation, but they also seem pretty positive that they're going to be able to figure out a way out of it.
Yeah,
so maybe that's why we don't have the tension that we were talking about before.
Yeah, part of that, partly maybe is it does feel too easy. It is in this first batch of planets that they go searching for. It's the last raptor, sure. It's it's Boomer's raptor who's the last one who finds the water. And they, like I said, they do a little moment here where her Cylon programming's trying to stop her from telling anyone, but other than that, like, it is relatively quite quick, and maybe this is the sort of thing where it would have been better if this was like an ongoing concern in the background for like 2 or 3 episodes before like they finally got this, maybe right when that deadline of those first wave of ships that were going to run out of water was about to hit or something, just to milk it a bit more for ultimate tension. But I liked all the scenes that came out of like the Adama Rosalind like talking about this, or even them talking to Baltar about the screening process and him trying to dance away around the fact that he never actually came up with one. He just kind of pointed a finger. So he's like, oh, I need resources for this fancy element the thing. I need that.
What a moment.
Oh dear.
Yeah, when she asks him initially about how's your Cylon detecting system going, it's like absolutely deer in the headlights. No thought about this whatsoever since the initial time he accused the Doral model of being a Cylon so they could leave him behind on the planet. But what they come to also very quickly is that there has to be a Cylon agent on board. That has to be how the water tanks were sabotaged.
Well, yeah, once they know that they've been sabotaged, yeah, they come to that conclusion. I would say that his Cylon detector, like when she asked that question, how's that Cylon detector going? It's going about as well as their bullshit detector, because once again, Baltar is like the least convincing person on the planet. And there's even a moment where they kind of tease that Adama's kind of like figured it out.
Perhaps.
Adama's like, oh, I can tell by the way you're speaking that you need resources, you need a staff, you can't do this all on your own, it's too much for one man.
You need some help. You need somebody watching you to make sure you're doing something.
So yeah, that's why Gata is sort of enlisted to keep an eye on him, and he's all eager about it. He's all excited because he's a science nerd and wants to help. But which is interesting.
Baltar ditches him.
He does ditch him, yes, but I do think from a Gata perspective, though, it is nice to give him something else. Because, up until now, he's just been the guy who like says the things in the command deck, right? He's just the one carrying out those orders and saying things back to the commander. So it's nice that he's got a bit more of a personality now that he's been given a trait. So
Well, we know actually, though, he is very like scientific math oriented because in either the previous episode or the miniseries, he was the one who had to calculate coordinates by hand without using a system for jumps that they
sure, but that's a skill. I'm talking about personality. Him being excited and nerdy is very new versus anything we saw from him before. Some other little things to mention. Rosalind asks Apollo to kind of be a military advisor, and although she makes it clear it's not about replacing that Adama is going to advise her on military decisions, it's more about having someone to advise her on how to work with the military because she doesn't know how to do that.
Right. Because the insight he gave her before was really valuable to her, and it made her consider things about Adama she just hadn't considered before. She thought he enjoyed the ceremony. Actually, he hates it. But he did it because he was willing to build that bridge to her. And of course, she tells Apollo that his first directive is that he gets to tell Adama that he's now advising her on military matters and protocol and things like that.
I'm sure he'll love hearing that. That'll bring him much joy, I'm sure.
Something else, actually, two other big things that we need to talk about. So one is, we mentioned that when Boomer and Crashdown are out in the Raptor, Sharon sees the scan, and finally Crashdown sees it too, and so they identify that there's water there. But at the same time, there's a bomb, or at least a detonator or something, under the table, as you were saying before, under her console.
Yeah, it's the final one, because remember it was like, 5 of the explosions were in the water tanks, and there was one left, and then she's basically discovered she had it, almost like she was going to set it off herself, and she kind of had to stop herself as well during that scene. So we're already getting into this idea of like fighting the programming. Can Boomer like be the person she wants to be versus what she was built to be, kind of thing.
But she does resist, and then she tells Tyrell like there's something weird going on with the ship, and he tries to send Callie, but she's like, no, you should check it out. And he finds the detonator and turns it in to the Master at Arms, which she's a little stressed about at first because she thinks it makes them look bad. And he says, no, it looks like somebody's trying to set you up still. The other thing that we need to mention is that we do see Hilo and the other Sharon model back on silent occupied Caprica. And it's pouring rain there while the fleet is out of water.
Yeah, it's pouring rain. It's still pouring rain. It's been pouring rain every single time we've seen Hilo on Caprica since we came back to him. I'm going to be honest, I don't think this stuff is that good yet. Like it's like the bare minimum just to sort of like establish that he's still there, and that this other Sharon is with him. They share a moment, like clearly he's maybe got some feelings for her, and he's like, why did you come back for me? And that's about it. Like that's the whole thing. They hear a signal to imply maybe there's someone to go find, but of course I think we can suspect that this is probably the Cylons setting them up or something, so.
Of course. And her Raptor is on the planet, and they were going to just sneak back to it and get away, but now there are Robo-Cylon models around it. They found it. She's saying that she flew really carefully, and she masked her signal, and he's like, well, clearly, a pilot can't do the job of an ECO, which is his job on the ship. So they have a little, like, friendly back and forth there, too, which was kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, but the one point of that, though, is that, like, this is all a lie, right? This is her trying to cover for the fact that she's just planted here. She never really came here from the Galactica, so it's all like how is she trying to like trick him or cover her tracks kind of thing. So yeah, and then we kind of mentioned as well that Baltar ditched Gata at one point, and that was to play cards. It was funny actually, because I think up until this point in the episode, it felt like they were really sort of taking a back seat on Baltar for the episode because he got so much focus in the miniseries and so much focus in 33. Same with Starbuck. So them sharing this one or two poker scenes together, where they're kind of just kind of measuring their egos against each other. Guys has been a little bit flirtatious. Starbuck might actually be the woman who's like a bit too much for him, frankly. But I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But there's definitely a little bit of tension and like eye glaring as he's beating her at cards. But it's interesting though, it's the only time in the entire episode, or arguably since like the first part of the miniseries, where he's not been like, you know, like a nervous little sniveling wreck the entire time. Like Six never shows up and talks to him during the poker scene. She was there earlier,
right,
during the Gaeta stuff and a little bit during one of the other scenes.
Conference, yeah.
But she never shows up during this poker scene. Like he's just in, it's like he remembered his mojo and his guy spalled her again for like, 10 minutes. But we'll see.
You know what's interesting
remains.
though is in this scene, when he wins the poker hand, we see that he actually can bluff convincingly, as opposed to when he's talking to Rosalind and Adama, where he really can't. So that was kind of an interesting contrast.
Yeah, that is actually quite an interesting thing to point out, because he is so terrible at it, and it's just by luck that no one else like knows the signs enough to call him out on anything. Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, it is fun watching him, get like weak and stutter and try and like find his excuse for why he hasn't done something, or why something isn't possible, or whatever it is in the context. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I do appreciate that. Like, we focused maybe on a few different characters this time. We pulled back from him and say Starbuck, and we gave a bit more time to Boomer, and even Tyrell to an extent. Like, we gave like some characters that we didn't focus on as much. And ultimately, it just comes down to the overall plot of this one doesn't hit quite as hard. But I do like all of the all of the decision making about what's going on from Adama, Roslyn, even to an extent Ty and Baltar. Like, all of that stuff was fascinating, of like how this is going to work. This little government that's forming, or cabal that's forming to take care of the fleet, and these problems they're having to solve. And I love problem solving when it comes to shows like this. And how do we deal? Okay, so we've dealt with getting away from the silos. Now we've dealt with water to an extent, and it's a little Deus Ex Machina because there's just a planet nearby with a bunch of water on it. Okay, cool. But I'm like, okay, what's the next problem, and how creative are they going to have to get to solve it? Like that's exciting to me, because it's mechanical. It's something where there's a goal in mind and we have to fix it, and it feels like hard choices need to be made. And that's something else they talk about in this episode. Rosalind and Apollo is like the weight of the ship from last episode, the Olympia, is still like, bearing down on them, and it's like, okay, we still have to live with this. So I like how weighty everything feels.
Yeah, Apollo and Adama have a brief conversation about it earlier in the episode, and Adama's kind of just like, man up, you got to deal with it. So you kind of see like maybe a lack of sort of empathy there. But then when he talks to Rosalind, she tells him about the former president, Adar, had to call in some kind of military strike, and he kept the names of all of the people who died in that military strike in his desk as kind of a reminder of the weight of his responsibility and his choices. And she pulls out just a little slip of paper with cut off corners that says Olympic carrier on it.
Even the post-it notes.
So she's carrying that quite literally with her. So you see that it's not that Adama is wrong in any sense. I think Adama's feeling is, I can't dwell on something like this. It happened and we have to be ready for the next thing. Rosalind, I think, is saying it happened and I can't forget that it happened. It has to influence my future decision making.
Well, I think it's important to know that almost no one, in fact, I don't think anyone, is actually saying we did the wrong thing. Everyone basically agrees that in the context of what was going on, it needed to happen, but obviously we all have to feel the weight of what we did. And so Rosalind's like, I am going to keep this bit of paper and remember the choice I made because it had to be made. But I think the point that Adama's getting at is to go a bit deeper into it, is just this idea of like, we're going to have another problem tomorrow, and we're going to have another problem the day after that. Because the line he has is, let the historians figure out like how right each choice was. We have to do the best we can in each moment, and we can't just obsess over the last thing because it'll just make us unfocused for the next thing. Because they're in this constant state of crisis. They're in this like constant emergency right now, and basically they're going to be in that constant state of emergency until the show ends. So buckle up.
Well, and it's changed a little bit, right? Because we talked about in the previous episode how that constant state of crisis was every half an hour.
Sure.
Now, that level, like we said before, that level of urgency isn't quite there, but it doesn't mean that things aren't still, tense, and you do start to have that feeling of when are they going to catch a break.
Like they get to breathe a little bit this episode, but I mean the entire like scenario of the fleet is still pretty much like a state of like I don't know what to compare it to in history, but like I don't know, like when I don't even have an example. I'm trying to think of like a country that technically has no leader for like a year or something like that. So the entire year is like nothing's normal. Everything's under this weird military state police or whatever. It's kind of like that where like, oh, like nothing's allowed to settle and be like any kind of thing. Because we know that, I mean, the goal even is to get to a point where we get to settle into a new life normal on Earth somewhere. Whereas, like everything here is temporary for one way or another. So, yeah, no, fun stuff. I did also notice, I don't think it was in the first episode, but this one had the intro. I don't even know what you'd call it other than intro, but, it basically just explains the premise of the show. Like, the Cylons, there's many copies. Some of them think they are human. That stuff. The only reason why I'm bringing it up is because I will say the end of it where it says, and they have a plan, is something that I remember, like, people, as the show went on and it became kind of clear, everyone kind of kept, did they have a plan? It doesn't really feel like there's actually a set plan in mind here.
There's much of a plan, yeah.
Yeah, so it just kind of feel like, oh, you maybe chose that word a bit poorly, because it made it sound like there was like this dedicated idea they had in their head the entire time. It kind of feels like the Cylons are making up a lot as they go along, to be honest, for most of the show, but just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, that is episode 2. That is War. And we'll continue the adventures of this wacky civilization floating through space.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever referred to this show as wacky. It's a lot of things, but it's not wacky.
No.
So, no.
Yeah, no. A good episode, just maybe not quite as strong as episode.
Yeah, perfectly solid. I don't want to sound negative on it. There's just like little things I could say, oh, this could have been a bit more exciting, and I the ending, because the ending is basically just Boomer talking to Tyrell and like basically him consoling her a little bit, and she's like, yeah, I'm good. And then the ending's her walking down the hall with a serious look in her face and the drums kicking in like, oh, she's still a Cylon. Everyone prepare yourselves.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah, like who knows what's going to happen next with her.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, I imagine she won't be the focus of next episode, just because she got a lot of focus in this one. But you never know. We'll find out. Just look, I won't say who or anything, but I will say, looking at the images from the next one, a very prominent character is introduced in the next episode. So we should.
Oh, interesting. I did not look ahead yet, but now I'm curious too.
Yeah. Well, you'll know who it is as soon as you see him. But like, it's
Sure.
All right, that is the review. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. You can, of course, let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments. You can like, subscribe, all that stuff. And of course, if you want to support the channel, both this one and the Mail Fuzz Movies podcast channel, you can do that over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And thanks to everyone who already does it. It does keep everything coming. So that is us. Thank you once again. We'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?